So in this video, we'll be discussing the subsidy element of government intervention, and we'll be discussing it from a producer point of view. So, for example, where a producer will receive a grant and they'll be incentivized to produce further. So let's just go and talk about this in further detail, and just discussing what a subsidy is in particular. And a subsidy is basically financial support that the government usually pay out to businesses. And it's usually in the form of a grant, so a direct payment, in order to support that business or that industry. And we have an example here. So in order to entice kind of foreign direct investment from the likes of Nissan, the car company, they decided to open up a car plant, a manufacturing facility in Sunderland. It's actually the biggest factory in the UK. It's the biggest single-handedly one building employer in the country. I think it employs around 7,000 people. And in the beginning, they were initially given £9,000 grant per employee per year because it created jobs. Okay, so why would we do these? And we'll discuss why in a bit. And it's because it creates a positive multiplier effect for the rest of Sunderland, and it also creates that factory alone creates around 25 to 35,000 indirect jobs as well throughout the United Kingdom. So it's kind of important that we maintain this factory there. And we're going to do this in the use of we're going to talk about this in an AA star kind of category. And usually we introduce subsidies when discussing how to resolve a problem. And this problem is the fact that we want producers to produce more, potentially, goods that create positive externalities. Alright, we want basically producers to produce more electric vehicles. We want them to be more energy efficient. We want them to produce more goods that provide health benefits, monetary benefits to the rest of society. Okay, so we'll kind of backtrack a little bit in the form of and discuss what we have here with regards to, if you remember, this is a positive externality production diagram. So remember, we always start off with the free market allocation where we're currently paying P1, Q1, but we know we are under providing. We want to be in a scenario where we are achieving the socially optimal allocation. And basically, we're currently producing at Q1, not at Q2. And we're charging P1 for that matter. And this good has an external benefit of the vertical distance where we have the free market allocation to A. So the vertical distance between the private marginal cost and the social marginal cost. And the government basically wants to increase the quantity. So how do we do that? Very simple. We basically provide a subsidy at the cost of the external benefit, to the amount associated with that external benefit. And thus, the subsidy will allow you to increase your quantity. So the subsidy itself will be P2 to P3, so it will be that amount here. And in terms of the quantity, they'll provide the entirety of the quantity at which you want to achieve. And this is always going to equal SMB equals SMC. That's where we have the socially optimal allocation. The producer receives P3. And because they've now got that grant, depending on the elasticity of supply and demand, they're able to charge a much lower price for that good. And it's because the government wants to increase the consumption and production of this good. So therefore, they allow the consumers to pay a lower price. And what happens is consumers actually have a higher consumer surplus, and firms are encouraged to provide more of this good, because initially they were charging P1, that's what they were getting, but now they're providing a larger quantity, and on top of that they're also receiving P3, which is a higher amount. Okay, so all of this is being given to the producer, basically. So to be able to charge a price of P2. Now, who's benefiting? The burden of this subsidy is something that we need to discuss here. And it's the complete opposite of the tax, indirect tax. And instead of having the consumer, remember, the consumer burden was up here and the producer burden was here. It's the complete opposite here. So the producer benefits this much, because remember, they're now charging P3, not P1. So if I write down here, P1 to P3 multiplied by Q2 is the producer benefit from the subsidy. And the consumer will benefit here. And that is P, because they're now receiving a lower price, so consumer surplus will be included in all of this as well. Okay. So that's exactly what we need to mention here. This increase in subsidies will result in the increased quantity and the lowering of the price. Okay, and when we discuss advantages and disadvantages, this will be quite clear when we go through that. So if you have any questions on this, make sure you ask in the discussion panel.